I definitely, without a doubt, have anxiety. As you know, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or if you already are an entrepreneur and you suffer from anxiety or extreme high levels of stress on a day-to-day basis, it's extremely hard to run a business. Can you do it? Sure, but is it 10 times harder than the man or woman that doesn't have anxiety? 100%. So in this video, I really want to dive deep into my story, and hopefully it can relate to you on some level that's why you're watching this video, as well as over the years, this 5-year journey that I've been on of really learning how to deal with it, and some of the things that I've learned and some of the action steps that I have now been taking that has changed my life essentially and really changed my relationship with stress and anxiety. So if that is something that you are interested in hearing about, then stay till the end. Welcome back, guys. My name is Hannah Gardner, and if you are new to the channel, I mostly talk about e-commerce and building brands online on Shopify and Etsy. But this is a little bit different of a video today and kind of even very personal. And what I'm talking about today is how to deal with anxiety in business. And I am not an expert, I'm not a medical professional by any means, but if you are an entrepreneur and you deal with anxiety, what I found as I am still going through my journey, is that connecting with other people, watching other successful entrepreneurs that also have dealt with the same issues with me, honestly has helped me immensely. Started experiencing anxiety for the first time when it was close to my senior year of college. That's when I first started having panic attacks for the first time. I personally believe that living in the flight or fight emotion, where you're having elongated periods of time of stress and anxiety, I don't believe that that's innate to our nature, that we're supposed to live like that, unless of course we're about to get eaten by a tiger or it's a life or death situation. But unfortunately in today's world, we are supposed to give a about what our boss thinks about us or what our neighbor thinks about us, or we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be successful in business, or because of our parents, because we have to appear like we are successful to other people. And I think there's a lot of factors, situations, and circumstances that we deal with today that we fundamentally didn't have to deal with when we were hunters and gatherers. Our everyday was gathering food and surviving, so we didn't really have time to worry about the BS and the things that really don't matter. No quality of life either. And I actually believe there's a lot of damage, like physical damage, that gets done to your body when you live in those states of fear and anxiousness and stress for an abnormal amount of time. And when I say abnormal amount of time, if you look back in history of our species as humans, we have the ability to have anxiety and have panic attacks and have intense stress on purpose, because it's used as a defense mechanism in order to protect ourselves from the lion that's going to eat us or the tiger that's chasing us. What our anxiety does for us in that sense is it allows us to protect ourselves, because our emotions skyrocket. Our flight or fight, fawn or freeze mechanism is used as a way to protect ourselves. Fight meaning fight the thing that's going to kill us. Flight meaning flee the scene, get out of the room of the tiger that's going to eat us. Fawn meaning let's negotiate our way out of this and maybe make them feel bad for us. And freeze meaning let's just freeze and do nothing, and maybe the thing will just go away. And so that is what's activated, all as a defense mechanism in order to stay safe for our survival. But now, because we are not hunter and gatherers and we are business owners, the circumstances have changed, but the emotion and the thing that we end up experiencing in our body remains the same, because we're still the same species for the most part that we were back when we were hunters and gatherers. So today, while anxiety does help us survive, it also is in some cases cutting off our flow state, which is our state that we really excel in order to be creative, build businesses, write books, do photography, all the things that we need to do as business owners, pretty much you cut off that circulation when you are living in the flight or fight state of being. And as you know, when you have anxiety and you have intense amounts of stress every single day, whatever you're trying to accomplish, whether it's building a business online or building a business anywhere else, it makes it that much harder to complete the task at hand when you suffer from anxiety. Well, I want to talk about now some of the things that I've proactively been doing and learning over my 5-year journey about anxiety and how I completely have a different relationship with anxiety from day one to now today. The first thing that I had to do, because you might not even believe this, but I was honestly in denial when I had my first panic attack. And as ignorant as this is, I honestly didn't even really believe in mental health. Overall, I really just didn't get it until it happened to me. When I had a panic attack, I'm saying like all of my motor skills turned off. I could see people talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. I had like electric bolts pulsating through my body. I couldn't move. I was just like paralyzed and just in a complete panic. It was almost like the only thing that I could explain or compare it to is kind of like having a bad trip on drugs, except there was no drugs. Like it was just me doing it to myself, essentially. And with that being said, if you have the ability to do something that intense to yourself, that means that you probably have the ability to also do the opposite. Just keep that in mind because I'm going to bring that back up later on. The first thing that I had to really do was recognize that I have a problem. To live in this heightened state of anxiousness for weeks, months on end, that is not normal. And so a lot of people just think that stress and anxiety accompanies life and you take a pill and it goes away and that's just normal. No, that is not normal. That is a huge misconception. And I'm not saying to not go to your doctor and seek help from a medical professional or take pills. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there's an actual reason why this is happening. And while if you do take pills, to suppress your anxiousness, just know that's not actually solving the problem. Again, I'm not saying don't go to your doctor, or if you need to take medication, seek a medical professional, but it's not actually getting to the root of the issue of why you're having it in the first place. Next really big aha moment I had from really trying to understand my anxiety and why I had such a crazy relationship with my anxiety was really understand that I actually do have control. You fundamentally don't believe that you have the power within you to help you or change your situation or change your emotions. If you think that you have no control, then you don't. But if you do, then you actually can make a change. So it's kind of like if you're an alcoholic, like you can't tell an alcoholic they're an alcoholic because they don't think they have an issue, and they'll come up with 1,000,001 excuses of why they're not an alcoholic, even though it can be clear as like the sky is blue that they're an alcoholic. So again, back to you can't escape the prison if you can't even admit that you're in one in the first place. The next part of that is admitting that you actually do have control over that circumstance. So my anxiety, what I discovered, as I started understanding and seeking help and talking to people, I fundamentally do have control. And as I mentioned before, I was able to put myself in that panic attack state, and like that is like an extreme case, then that probably means that whatever power was able to create that inside of me, then I probably can do the opposite. So realizing that I'm actually in control of this thing meaning me, myself, this body, was a huge step to making progress. This took me a long time to comprehend that I am not my thoughts. And you might be thinking, well, how am I not my thoughts? I'm the one thinking my thoughts, which is very, very true. But just because you have a thought or emotion, there's a little space in between having that emotion and acting on it where you actually have a choice. I can either embody this emotion and become this emotion and present that to my reality, or I can take that little gap and take a step back and maybe get a new perspective or latch on to a different emotion before that is just all consuming and it takes over my whole reality. Now, this is way easier said than done. Extremely, this is like years of practice because as you know, when you have anxiety and stress, it is such an overwhelming emotion that it literally is like on autopilot, where sometimes it is so strong that you don't have that gap or you don't find that opportunity to take a new perspective or pull back. It is very, very hard, especially when you're on the verge of a panic attack. But just like anything, like going to the gym, like learning how to read, with repetition and time and practice, you get better at it. I also just want to put that in perspective. Imagine you've never went to the gym ever in your entire life, and then you went to the most intense, high intensity interval training class. You're surely gonna die. You're gonna feel like you're dying at the end of it. But learning how to control your emotions, change the perspective, and that little gap that I'm talking about, learning how to create that little gap, it's harder than any high intensity interval training class you'll ever do in a lifetime. This stuff is hard. And if it was easy, people wouldn't have all of these issues that they think are besides themselves, because if it was easy, then we would all be fine and grand and dandy. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And because no one teaches us this, and we build habits around stress and anxiety and accept it as that's just the way it is, when you do that on years on end and build habits around your stress and anxiety, it becomes that much harder to undo the damage that has been done. Luckily, I feel like today versus 20 years ago, people are bringing more light to this in our world today versus 20 or 30 years ago, where it was like, that's esoteric, or that's just like some hippie stuff. And that leads me to my third point of what's really helped me or pushed me over the edge with really learning how to invest time in myself and take care of this issue, because it is an issue. And that is learning the science behind what actually is going on inside of your body when you are at elevated levels of stress and anxiety. Educating myself on actually the physicality of what's happening to you when you're in those states and the damage that it causes inside of your body, and how you're offsetting all your body processes when you live like that for elongated periods of time, just pushed me further and motivated me even more to take this more seriously, to make changes within myself, not only just for quality of life, but remember, I'm also trying to build this business as well. So it's like all of my goals and all these things that I want to accomplish, it's going to be so much harder if I'm living in this state of fight or flight. When I started really understanding the science behind it, which I could talk for hours on that, but just to give you a little idea of what's happening inside of your brain, essentially you have something called a brain stem. Your brain stem gets heavily activated when you start feeling emotions like fear, elevated emotions of anxiety, and your brain stem is what controls basically all of your regulatory processes within your body. So your heart rate, your blood flow, your willingness to exercise, everything that has to do with your survival is activated when you have anxiety, because what you need to do when you have anxiety is protect yourself. So the four things that I brought up previously, your fight, your flight, your freeze, or your fawn, all of those things get hyper activated and elevated when you're about to get killed by a tiger or something. And that's why it's necessary for you to survive. But in the case that you are just stressed because you're putting a bunch of pressure on yourself because you want to grow a business, it doesn't really apply. And what it physically does to your body, it removes the blood flow from your frontal brain, which is responsible for your creativeness, your flow state, your logical brain, your smart brain, which is what they call your frontal lobe. It removes the blood from that part of your brain and starts giving more energy and more blood flow to your brain stem, which again is responsible for your survival mechanisms. So whatever your task is at hand, whatever it's trying to do your bookkeeping for your new business, whether that's trying to, create new designs for new product launches, it's physically almost not possible, because all of your energy and all of your blood flow is being directed into your brainstem, which is helping you survive, except you don't need that to be activated when you're trying to be creative for your business. So just knowing that science behind what I'm doing to myself as I'm getting stressed out, I always relate that back to my business, and that I am personally hurting my business by allowing myself and not taking care of this problem every single day day that I have 30 tasks at hand that I need to do for my business, it's gonna feel like I have 120 tasks at hand if I'm under extreme stress or anxiety. So I have to learn how to get myself out of that state, come back to a flow state, a relaxed state, in order to actually make more like beneficial, progress in my business. Now you might be wondering, well, how do I actually get myself out of, this flight or flight state when I am experiencing this? And the first thing that I really learned how to do and do it efficiently was learning how to breathe. As crazy as that sounds, it honestly makes a lot of sense. Like, I always love to work out and go to the gym. And what working out does for you, it forces you to take deep breaths. So there's something called a parasympathetic nervous system and a sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system gets activated when you're in that flight or fight sensory state. And when you begin to take deep breaths in and deep breaths out, it's actually physically impossible to remain in a fight or flight state. It's actually physically impossible, because what you're doing is you're deactivating the sympathetic nervous system and reactivating the parasympathetic nervous system. What's responsible for restoring your bodily function, brings it back to a calming and restored state, and prevents your body from overworking itself, which is the complete opposite of what the sympathetic nervous system does to you. That brings me into the next thing that I really discovered, aside from just learning how to breathe properly. And when I say breathe properly, I mean breathing in through your nose, making sure air is going all the way to the bottom of your diaphragm, and breathing out. And you'll be surprised how hard or how much more difficult it is to stay in an elevated state of anxiety and stress when you take 10 deep breaths in and consciously feel the air go in and then the air come out. This leads me to my next thing that I've learned, and it's taken me an immensely long time to learn this. And this is where I cannot reiterate enough that working on yourself and getting your mental health making it a priority first should be your first priority even before your business, because your quality of life and the quality of the work that you put out is really contingent on your emotional state. So even if you manage to build an wildly successful business, your emotional life and the quality of life that you're gonna have is still gonna be like a 5 or 6 compared to an 8 or 9, where it could be if you were actually enjoying life during that process. The point I'm trying to make is it takes a long time to adopt new skills, especially if they're new. It's not just like learning a skill like e-commerce, and once you acquire a skill, it's forever. Working on yourself, learning how to do breath work, learning how to be mindful of your emotions is super hard, because your brain constantly wants to go back to what it knows, which is stress and anxiety. And so the next thing that I'm going to bring up is something called meditation. And I'm sure you've heard of it. And you'll hear people say, meditation doesn't work for me, I don't get it, blah, blah, blah. Well, the only thing that I can correlate that to, again, it's just like if you've never sat down for 5 minutes and made yourself sit down and tried to meditate in your life, and you're gonna do it for the first time after 30 years of never trying it, yeah, you're going to suck at it, and it's gonna be really hard. It's gonna be harder than that high intensity interval training class that you were gonna try last week. It's harder than that. Learning how to sit and calm your thoughts, not so much stop your thoughts, because that's not what meditation is at all, but calming your mind and being able to see your thoughts from a different perspective is such a huge therapeutic thing that I've learned how to do. And when I first started out, it's still hard for me. I'm not saying that I'm like a freaking meditation guru or something like that. I'm about 2 years into trying to bring meditation more regularly into my schedule. But what I can tell you is the days that I meditate versus the days that I don't meditate are completely different days. And normally when you talk to people that say, oh, it doesn't work for me, or whatever. Usually those are the people that actually need it the most, and they just haven't put in the work to really understand what's happening when you're meditating. And as I mentioned before, it's like scientifically not possible for you to stay in a flight or fight state of mind when you are getting out of the sympathetic nervous system and getting into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is also what meditation does as well. So it's physically not possible. So not saying that maybe later on in that same day you might end up back to activating that nervous system, but as you do this and as you build a habit of it, it helps immensely. And the more research I do about it, the more I realize that some of the top CEOs in the world have it in their daily morning routine to meditate. Huge names and CEOs have adopted this into their daily routine. And there's a reason why. When you are a CEO of a, 9-figure company and you're managing the livelihoods of dozens, if not hundreds of people, that is a lot of stress. And, to combat that, there is a way to have your cake and eat it too. I truly believe that. And so, you see these huge names adopting these, techniques and habits into their daily routine. And I will say there's many avenues to helping anxiety. This is my video of what's helped me personally in this journey. And, I have much more to learn, many more years, a lifetime of practice ahead of me. But I'm happy to be able to share it here on this channel with you guys. And hopefully if it helps one single person or maybe gives sparks a light of inspiration or an idea to try something for you on your own journey, then I'm super happy that I could do that for you. But thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos coming up later this week. Bye guys.